In this video, we are going to discuss factoring the difference of two squares. So how do we factor out difference of two squares? First, we have the formula a squared minus b squared is equal to a plus b times a minus b. The steps are: number 1, take the square roots of the two terms. Number 2, write the product of the sum and difference of the square roots. So before we proceed, let's have here the review for perfect squares, square roots, and squares. So we have here the perfect squares from 1 to 100. We have 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. Now, for their square roots, why are they considered perfect square? It is because when we get the square roots of this perfect square, the answer is an exact whole number. Let's say, for example, we get the square root of 1, and that is equal to 1. Why? It's because when we square 1, or 1 squared, that is equal to 1 times 1 equals 1. When we get the square root of 4, that is equal to 2. Because 2 squared is equal to 2 times 2, and that is 4. Next, square root of 9 is equal to 3 because 3 squared is equal to 3 times 3, which is equal to 9. Square root of 16 is equal to 4. 4 squared is equal to 4 times 4, which is equal to 16. When we get the square root of 25, that is equal to 5. It is because when we square 5, we are going to have 5 times 5, which is equal to 25. Getting the square root of 36, we have 6, because 6 squared is equal to 36. Square root of 49 is equal to 7, because 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is equal to 49. Getting the square root of 64, we have 8, because 8 squared is equal to 8 times 8, and that is 64. When we get the square root of 81, we have 9, because 9 squared is equal to 81. When we get the square root of 100, we have 10, because 10 squared is equal to 10 times 10, and that is equal to 100. Now, when we talk about perfect squares, square roots, and squares na may kinalaman sa variables, look at these examples here. Perfect squares are x squared, x to the 4th, x to the 6th power, x to the 8th power, x to the 10th power, and so on. Kung mapapansin natin, lahat ng kanilang exponents are even numbers or exactly divisible by 2. So pagdating sa variables, we can say that they are perfect squares if the exponent is exactly divisible by 2. Now, when we get the square roots, let's say, for example, we're trying to get the square root of x squared. The square root of x squared is equal to x. Why? Because x squared is equal to x squared. When we get the square root of x to the 4th power, the answer is x squared. Why? It's because when we square x squared, that is x squared times x squared, and that is x to the 4th power. Or simply, we are just multiplying these exponents 2 and 2. And ganun na nga rin yung ginawa sa iba. Let's say, for example, dito sa dulo, we are trying to get the square root of x to the 50th power. The answer is x raised to 25. It is because when we get the square of x raised to 25, that is x raised to 25 times x raised to 25. So, in this case, minumultiply lang natin yung kanilang mga exponents, yung mga exponents dito. That's why we get x to the 50th power. Let's try to answer some examples here. So, let's try to factor m squared minus 9n squared using the difference of two squares method. So, let's just remember the steps. Number 1, take the square roots of the two terms. And number 2, write the product of the sum and difference of the square roots. So how do we do that? First, let us think or let us get the square root of the terms m squared and 9n squared. The square root of m squared is m, and the square root of 9n squared is the same as getting the square root of 9 and getting the square root of n squared. So the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of n squared is n. So therefore, we have the square root of 9n squared is equal to 3n. Then for step 2, let us write the product of the sum and difference of the square roots. So we have m, the sum and difference, plus n minus the second term, which is 3n. From here, we can say that m squared minus 9n squared is equal to m plus 3n times m minus 3n. So let's have more examples. Let's try to factor out x squared minus 81. So first, let's get the square root of the terms x squared and 81. So the square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 81 is 9. Express these two as the sum and difference of the square roots. So that is x squared minus 81 is equal to x plus 9 times x minus 9. Second example, let's try to factor out 64x squared minus 49. What is the square root of 64x squared? We have 8x. And what is the square root of 49? That is 7 times 7. And express this as the sum and difference of these two terms. Hence, we can say that 64x squared minus 49 is equal to 8x plus 7 times 8x minus 7. Next, we have 81x squared minus 16y squared. First, let us get the square root of 81x squared, and that is 9x. The square root of 16y squared is 4y. So the factor of 81x squared minus 16y squared is equal to 9x plus 4y times 9x minus 4y. Next example, let's try to factor out 25x to the 4th power minus 9y to the 6th power. Let's get the square root of 25x to the 4th power, and that is 5x squared. What is the square root of 9y to the 6th power? That's 3y to the 3rd power. Express this as the sum and difference of the two terms. So therefore, we have 25x to the 4th power minus 9y to the 6th power is equal to 5x squared plus 3y cubed times 5x squared minus 3y cubed. And next, we have x to the 10th power minus 4y to the 4th power. Let's get the square root of x to the 10th power. And that is x to the 5th power. Now, what is the square root of 4y to the 4th power? We have 2y to the 2nd power. So therefore, we have the factors of x to the 10th power minus 4y to the 4th power is equal to x to the 5th power plus 2y squared times x to the 5th power minus 2y squared. And that's it. Thank you.